All right, everybody, welcome to today's video. And today's topic, we're continuing our series on how to modify your SRT-4. And specifically, we're gonna cover modifications for the transmissions in these cars. Now, these cars, it's a really good transmission, but at the same time, there's a lot of areas for improvement. And so that's why we've got a video specific to just the transmission. Now, some of the items in this list I went over in my basic modifications video, but we'll go ahead and include them in here so that way if you're looking for specific transmission stuff, you don't have to go hunt through my other videos. Now, if you haven't watched the other videos on how to modify your SRT-4, I highly recommend you check them out because they give you a good overall path on how to get your car to the levels of performance that you want. So for the transmission though, we'll start off, you need to make things a level playing field to cover all 3 years. First thing is, unfortunately, for those of you that have a 2003, you're at a bit of a disadvantage out of the gate because you don't have a limited slip differential. 2004 and 2005 model years had a limited slip diff from the factory. 03s, you had an open differential. So that's definitely an expensive upgrade right off the bat, but if you want to maximize the performance, you need to go ahead and add that limited slip to your car. Now, everything else, of course, is on this list, applies to all your SRT-4s, and so let's start with the shifter. Now, the shifter cables on these cars had rubber bushings on each end, and they definitely deteriorate over time. I know when I picked up my SRT-4 here, it had the rubber bushings were just completely shot, and it was really hard to shift. A couple of them, I was really surprised that the cable was still attached to the transmission because there was just so little of the bushing left. So upgrading those with Booger Bushings works great. I've had these in here since day one, going on almost 4 years now, and haven't had a single problem with them. Now, from here, along the same lines with the shifter, is replacing the shifter itself. So the factory shifter on this car is decent, but there are a variety of short throw shifters available from the aftermarket. My dad has one from Mopar Performance in his 2005 ACR, and in mine, I've got the Hirsch short throw shifter. And it's been a great shifter. I really love that one. The Mopar one gives you more of a stock appearance, but it just shortens the throw of the shifter. And then another company, Mad Dog, they make short throw shifters as well, and I think there might be another company or two out there that make shifters for these cars. Now from here, another simple modification to do is to install the AGP Billet shift extender and selector. You have to pull the top shift plate off of the transmission to get access to them, but they're really simple to install, and I think you can do it in under an hour is what it took me on this one. It definitely helps with the positive engagement of the shifts, especially if you're starting to have issues with third gear and you don't want to go ahead and reach the point where you need to pull the transmission apart and replace the shift fork, which is another thing on this list. If you're not already aware, these cars are notorious for breaking the shift fork for the third and fourth gear. And there are a variety of companies out there that make upgraded units that have modified the originals with stronger components, or just replace the component entirely with a billet upgrade. So there are a few companies out there that make those, and depending on which one you prefer, you select which one you want to go with. But replacing that shift fork is definitely a lot more involved because you need to pull the transmission from the car, disassemble the gear set, and to be able to get access to that clutch fork. Now, if your car is just starting to act up a little bit on the third gear, you're probably going to be fine with just installing the AGP Billet shift extender and selector. I installed those in mine right off the bat when I got it 4 years ago, and I put over 50,000 miles on the car and still haven't had any issues with the fork itself. But of course, one day that's going to be something I'm going to need to replace. Now from here, the next things to do are surrounding the clutch area, and when you replace the clutch, a couple of parts that you want to consider upgrading. So on these cars, the clutch fork itself tends to be a bit of a weak spot and wears out, and so there are a couple companies out there that make upgraded ones. You can either get one that's been modified with stronger inserts where the throwout bearing interfaces the clutch fork, or you can just get a billet clutch fork altogether that's upgraded and prevents that wear. Now, the problem with having this clutch fork wear out is it makes it more difficult to disengage and engage the clutch. And so if you've got the transmission out doing a clutch job, you're gonna wanna go ahead and install an upgraded clutch fork while you're there. And at the same time, you're probably gonna wanna replace the clutch fork pivot ball because that has a plastic piece that tends to break and cause more problems with engaging, disengaging the clutch. And so there are a couple of companies out there that make billet clutch pivot fork balls to make that swap out just something to do while you're doing the clutch. Now, of course, at the same time, doing the clutch, upgrading the clutch on these cars is also a good area for upgrades. The stock clutch is good up to doing a lot of your basic bolt-on modifications, but if you start doing things like big turbos and start putting down some serious power, you're gonna need to upgrade that clutch assembly. And there's a variety of companies out there that make clutches. ACT is notorious for making some amazing clutches for these cars that can handle some serious horsepower. And depending on what kind of power levels you're looking at and what type of ETs you're gonna be pulling, can determine what type of clutch you want to go with. So that one, of course, unfortunately is specific to what power levels you're looking at, but there are a lot of clutch options out there. And those, if you're like I mentioned, if you're doing a big turbo upgrade, you're gonna want to go ahead and replace that clutch with a higher performance clutch. So another area you want to look at are your half shafts. Now the OEM ones, they're pretty good, but unfortunately a lot of the ones you can buy at your local auto parts store, even though they have a lifetime warranty, tend to be junk and can't even handle the stock power on these cars. So if you don't want to be replacing half shafts all the time, even though they've got a lifetime warranty, they just take your time to replace them, I would recommend, if you're starting to put down some serious power, getting a good set of axles that from like Modern Performance carries a variety of axles, or Darrell Cox Racing has high performance axles. Something that's going to hold up to some serious power. If you're going to go ahead and start drag racing and having like wrinkle wall slicks on your car and big turbo making big power, you don't want to be breaking half shafts all the time. And so you definitely want to get a good quality set of half shafts. Now, another thing you want to consider upgrading on your car is the clutch rod that attaches to the pedal underneath the dash. Those tend to wear out and break over time. Darrell Cox Racing makes a great upgraded unit that you can go ahead and put in there. It's just something, it's more of a preventive maintenance type of thing to go ahead and replace that. Now, the last couple of things on this list are for those that are putting down serious power and need some serious internals. And that's replacing things like your input shaft with like a billet input shaft, replacing the gear set with like straight cut gears, like a set of Liberty gears. These things will definitely hold up to some serious power, but at the same time, you're gonna be looking at a lot of money to go ahead and upgrade those. And then from there, of course, getting a fully built transmission that's got all the stuff upgraded on it is gonna be your final line of defense to some serious power. And those can cost several $1,000s and up, depending on how extreme of a transmission you go with. All right, and so that's basically my thoughts on your basic upgrades for the transmission on these SRT-4s. As always, I hope you found this information useful, and if you did, go ahead and smash that like button, give me that thumbs up. It helps me out tremendously with that YouTube algorithm. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm including in the description below all the links to all of these parts. That way it's easy for you to go ahead and find the parts that you need for your project. And of course, if you want to be kept up to date to all my future uploads, don't forget to smash that subscribe button down below and ring that notification bell as well. So that way YouTube will keep you up to date of all the videos I do in the future. And as always, guys, I will see you the next video.